Greetings, deep divers. It's Maddie from MadeUpByMaddie.com, bringing you another happening episode of The Dive. For today's transformation, our inspiration will be the woman who was named the face of 1966, supermodel extraordinaire Twiggy. Hailing from London, Twiggy, then known as Leslie Hornby, got her big break at 16 years old when her photo was spotted on a salon wall by a fashion photographer. She would later become famous after adopting a short bob haircut, mod style, and insane bottom lashes. Today we are getting our kicks on Route 66, 1966 that is. So without further ado, let's jump in. And now for the headlines of 1966. On March 25th and 26th of 1966, approximately 100,000 people attended marches in almost 100 cities across the nation to protest for peace in hopes to end the Vietnam War. It's a Small World water-based boat ride officially opens at Disneyland on May 28, 1966. Originally designed by the Disney Company and built in Burbank, California for the 1964 New York World's Fair, it was later disassembled and shipped back to California and is still a major staple at Disneyland to this day. On June 13, 1966, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that all criminal suspects must be advised of their rights before interrogation. If you've ever heard an officer begin to say, "You have the right to remain silent" speech, they would be reading you your Miranda rights. The Chevrolet Camaro first went on sale on September 29, 1966, with a base price of only $2,466. And if that fact is astonishing, the average cost of a home in the United States in 1966 was $21,400. And now I'll be sharing the 7 albums I listened to during my week in 1966. On Sunday, I listened to Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. Now, I thought it would be really appropriate to start my week of 1966 with what is said to be the best album ever made. Although I was already pretty familiar with a few tracks before listening to this album, listening to the entire masterpiece really helped me understand why this album is so revered. Although this album is coming up on its 60th anniversary, its lyrics are still relatable. The songs take the listener to not only a place in time, but a place in their emotions. Said to have been inspired by the Beatles' Rubber Soul, this masterpiece excites, ignites, and withstands the test of time. My favorites are Wouldn't It Be Nice, Sloop John B, God Only Knows, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, and I Know There's an Answer. And Monday brought me Sinatra at the Sands by Frank Sinatra. Now, call me a sucker for my home city, but when I saw Sinatra released an album singing from the now defunct Sands Hotel and Casino, I was in. Count Basie makes another appearance with Sinatra, accompanying with his orchestra, and the stage is set for a fun night. Old Blue Eyes pulls out all the stops and seems to be at the top of his game, stopping the show for Tea Time, a comic relief segment where he pokes fun at other various Rat Pack members, including himself. My favorites off this record, Come Fly With Me and One for My Baby. Alright, and Tuesday I listened to Revolver by the Beatles. Now, if you guessed that I'm going to be listening to a Beatles album every year, you'd be absolutely right. This record is all over the place, but in the best way possible. Dare I say, at this point in my challenge, it might just be my favorite Beatles album. More regal, more orchestral, and trippier than the previous efforts, Revolver takes you on a trip whether you're ready or not. The sonic techniques utilized in recording this album are mind-blowing. There is nothing like this record. My favorites are Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, Yellow Submarine, Dr. Robert, Tomorrow Never Knows, I'm Only Sleeping, and Here, There, and Everywhere. And on Wednesday, I listened to Complete and Unbelievable, the Otis Redding Dictionary of Soul by Otis Redding. Aptly named the King of Soul, Otis comes in strong with his powerhouse of an album. Featuring many noteworthy musicians of the time, including Booker T and the MGs, this album is a culmination of pure, raw talent. Redding's signature voice really shines through the stellar rhythm section's clever choices, yet one never outshines the other. My favorites are Fa 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 Fa, Try a Little Tenderness, Love Have Mercy, and Day Tripper, which is a Beatles cover. And Thursday brought me Blonde on Blonde by Bob Dylan. Another great Dylan staple, Blonde on Blonde was released in the summer of 1966 as a double album. The songs on this collection are even a little more clever than Highway 61 Revisited. The sound is a little crisper, perhaps in part due to a new set of backing musicians. Now boasting a nearly 73-minute runtime, the tracks are still as captivating as ever. Not bad for a man who recorded 3 of his most revered albums in the course of only 2 years. My favorites off this record: Rainy Day Women, number 12 and 35, One of Us Must Know, I Want You, and Stuck Inside of Mobile with the Memphis Blues Again. And on Friday, I listened to Aftermath by the Rolling Stones. Now we arrive to what has become my most favorite Rolling Stones album. This is the first Stones record featuring all original compositions, and it shows. Many different types of instruments are introduced, keeping this masterpiece just as enthralling from beginning to end. Though 2 versions were released, one in the UK and one in the US, both versions rock. My favorites off this record: Paint It Black, Under My Thumb, Don't You Bother Me, Flight 505, High and Dry, and It's Not Easy. And on Saturday, I listened to Wild as the Wind by Nina Simone. Now finally winding down my week with another revisited favorite, Nina Simone. Wild as the Wind was an album that I never listened to in its entirety, so this was the perfect opportunity to do so. The biggest mistake I could have made was waiting even longer to listen to it. Though Simone is only credited to writing 1 song on the album, For Women, she brings her style to execute all 11 tracks and does so with ease. Now, as Nina was becoming more and more involved as a civil rights activist, her music really reflected more passion in her piano playing, and especially in her voice. My favorite songs off this album: I Love Your Lovin' Ways, Lilac Wine, For Women, Break Down and Let It All Out, Why Keep on Breaking My Heart, and Either Way I Lose. Now it's movie time. I kicked off 1966 by watching the original Batman movie starring Adam West and Cesar Romero. It was a really fun movie, very colorful. Adam West notably not as ripped as the Batmans that were to come later, but that's okay, that he didn't need to be. So I never watched the series, but I just thought it was really funny. Maybe this is the origin of this type of style of shot, but climbing the side of the building, but being filmed obviously like upright. That comes from this movie. Like I said, it could have been used years before. I got a kick out of that. I love the sets. They're so colorful. They look like comic books. The villains are so beautifully cheesy, but in the best way possible. It's very campy and it's played up, and I think it's really supposed to be like that. The movie had some parts where it dragged, but it never left you bored because of the scenery and just the way everything looks. So next on my list, I watched Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. This movie is very dialogue-centric. There's a lot that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's the dynamic. Every character playing off one another. There's really only 4 main characters in the movie, but when they go at it, it's so miserable and it's so raw. Again, another 60s movie that runs a little bit over 2 hours, but it's the tension, it's that uncomfortability that really keeps you engaged, and it's a fabulous movie. I definitely recommend Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. So finally, we land on Seconds. Now this is my spooky movie of the year. I mean, it's not really horror, so I'll just call it spooky, but it's a science fiction movie, and it kind of answers that age-old question, or that curiosity of what it would be like to be a different person altogether. Kind of like be reborn a different person. And the movie uses the concept of getting plastic surgery done in order to just become a different person. That's where the word seconds comes in. It was done very well. I was very impressed with the acting. The concept was really fresh and new. I don't think I've seen many movies that really explore that concept, or maybe I haven't seen them. So Rock Hudson stars in this movie. And the movie is based on a book by the same name that came out maybe 2 or 3 years before. And I also recommend this movie.
It's time for the big splash.
Okay, so for my big splash recommendations, this was really hard in the music category. There are so many good albums. The Beach Boys to start off, considering that's their best album ever made and considered one of the best, if not the best record of all time. That's a really tough one to beat, but the Beatles' Revolver up against that, Otis Redding's album, Aftermath, which is my favorite Rolling Stones album, Wild as the Wind by Nina Simone, of course Bob Dylan. This one was really tough, but if I had to go song for song, the concept of a whole album, I would have to say Pet Sounds. It's a fantastic album. There's so many tracks on there that are just gold, if not every single song on there. It was basically Brian Wilson's creative baby out in the world. He did most of the work on the album, and it's pristine. It's so good, so listen to it. If you haven't already, I definitely recommend Pet Sounds. And 1966 was very kind to me in way of movies. I would have to say my Big Splash Award would be Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. The dialogue was so witty and so smart. I'm a fan of movies that don't have to rely on shtick or don't have to rely on bells and whistles. This movie is just dialogue. It's just tension building by use of dialogue, and that's really it. And the acting is fantastic. Elizabeth Taylor, it's really hard not to like anything she's in, whether she's the villain or the good guy. So definitely recommend Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
It's the look.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the look. One of my very best friends, Megan, was my model for this. Twiggy, very iconic. She was called the face of 1966. She was the it girl. She's everything. This actually did fall in budget of my $10. I bought the dress, the belt, the leggings, and I believe my model had the shoes. So with Twiggy, the most iconic thing about her look would be her bottom lashes, which I painted on using very, very thin lines. I wasn't super concerned with how thin they were, but I just wanted to make sure I had a lot of bottom lashes because that's the look that she sported back in the day. One thing that I remember distinctly about this makeover was not knowing the camera was not on record. So I did not capture that moment where I was doing the bottom lashes. But at least it was only 10 minutes of the total video, so hey, it's not there, but that was a lesson. For the makeup, I did another flat foundation again. I did add a little bit of contour. I feel like from some of the photos I've seen, yes, a lot of them are black and white, but it does look like she has a little bit of contour mixed in with blush. Some type of shaping is done to her cheekbones, so I did want to incorporate that as well. Of course, like I said, the lashes, a little bit more of a filled in brow on this look, and of course adding the freckles was another favorite touch of mine. I didn't base the clothes off a specific look, it was more an average of the look of Twiggy, so I was really happy with it. Twiggy didn't really rock a bold lip, her eyes were the statement piece. The big doe eyes, so I really wanted to accentuate that. Also, I gave Megan a cut crease, a very dramatic cut crease, as Twiggy is famous for rocking that as well. So it was a very cohesive look. It was very nice to bring together because there's so many elements that when put together, it makes it so recognizable. That's Twiggy. That's who I'm looking at. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If you want, you can always check out my website, madeupbymaddie.com, where you can see my blog, view my portfolio. My site is available in English and in Spanish, and of course you can contact me or book me, as I am a worldwide makeup artist and I would love to be a part of your world. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again next time.